Berlin!
Hello and welcome to IMP's WWE Adventures podcast on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Help the network out by leaving us a 5-star review, also give a donation directly through Red Circle, and become one of the amazing community by joining the Social Suplex Discord, link is in the description. Listen to the other top-notch shows here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network, One Nation Radio, Keeping It Strong Style, All Things Elite, Wrestling Arcus Things, Trish and Sarah, Tunnel Talk, and Sam Brown's AEW Match Guide. My name is Matt Maher, aka Imp, and this is your quick look back at the WWE week that was 30 Minuten 1, 2, 3. It's the week for Bash in Berlin, live from Germany this past Saturday. So let's quickly jump into it, because with these pay-per-view shows, I'll put a little bit more effort into the edit. The actual pay-per-view part often goes quite long, so I don't have to rush through the Raw bit. I've got quite a few notes for Raw, so the rushing through it's going to be pretty quick. So anyway, let's just jump right into it. Going into Berlin with the main event of Gunther versus Randy Orton. For the World Heavyweight Championship, Gunther versus Randy Orton. Main event Gunther in 2024? Hell yes. Yes, awesome. Main event Randy Orton in 2024? Is it not as much? Not as much. Home hero Gunther, neighbour, near-ish. Either way, they were on their feet singing and clapping for this main event. The fans out to better France for a hot atmosphere that isn't really paying attention for large spells, just having their own fun. So set the atmosphere, that kind of white hot atmosphere with the production as well. They've had the decibel meter up and everything just so they could look how white hot these crowds are. What's becoming apparent is, though, you can only have like a certain kind of match in front of these fans. That sounded a bit put down here. What I meant was when there's a crowd like this making this much noise, being that loud and having that much of a party atmosphere, you can't really get them invested in especially a slow pace kind of story. And the thing that really made it stand out was we'd just come off of All In, where we'd seen a loud, party atmosphere kind of crowd for the main event, and we saw exactly the style of match that you kind of have to do to really draw them in, just done at an incredible level because it's Bryan Danielson, who showed in WWE that under Daniel Bryan he could also do that. So we'd just seen it at All In, like how you kind of rope this crowd into getting invested in the match. Randy Orton doesn't do that style. It's fair to say. Sure, it's maybe unfair to compare him against the best of the generation. Maybe it's a bit unfair. However, comparing Kevin Nash against Bret Hart, maybe it's a bit unfair. However, it's still, at the end of the day, I was just kind of bored by this main event. I felt like my ears were hearing one thing, an absolutely crazy crowd chanting this was awesome, that were really into everything that was happening. But what I was seeing before me was one of the most boring matches. I was just so tired. Atmosphere, white hot. Amazing atmosphere, an amazing crowd. But the actual action that I'm seeing isn't doing really anything to get me excited personally. That said, I still absolutely love Gunther in this world champion role. I still think he's the absolute right guy. It's just this match wasn't quite right. And part of it is Randy Orton somewhat trying to bring the audience into the match with his style, and he's just not really able to do it. The way that he had quite a few times were just kind of slow the pace down to try and get the fans to either quiet down so they could get invested into it, but no, it's a white hot party atmosphere. It's like, really, this isn't the kind of match to be doing when you're trying to rope them in like this. It was a white hot party atmosphere crowd, and Randy Orton came out to try and slow things down and get them invested into what he was doing in the ring and the story, when he probably needed to go more spectacle, which is odd to say for WWE. One party did it better than the other. So this match for me, didn't think much of it at all. Really, really bored. Plenty of chops. Tick. Love my Gunther chops. Orton bringing his own replies. He launched the champion into the steps, creating a big old bruise on the Austrian's shoulder. At this point, it's kind of a relatively slower start, but I'm like, but it is setting up stuff. It's going to go places in the second half. Gunther doing a great job just selling the wear and tear, with those chops and lariats having lost a tad of their sting. The crowd, electric, just so white hot at this midway point in the match. But what I'm seeing is just largely fine. It's just, the actual match itself isn't doing anything really to draw me in. Escalating as Gunther powered through the pain to crash Randy down, it just wasn't enough, allowing the crowd to get their most wanted pop as they got their RKO. But by then, Randy was equally as knackered, and on with the match we rolled. A little oof as Orton hit his back body drop onto the steps by the German announce desk. If you thought regular Randy moved slow, have I got something for you when it's aching back, taking his time walking, Randy. Like, oh no. Oh no, it was already slow. Orton dropped Gunther onto the announce desk and posed on the steps. Very slow and plodding. The RKO shoved off and Gunther locked the headlock in. Randy Pandy fought him off, but that sleeper was locked right back in with a lovely pop from the crowd. Gunther winning and retaining. Orton faded in the choke and the European hero held on to his championship. Like, I'll say this, it takes something special to bore me during a Gunther match, but Randy Orton sure managed to find out how. Not a glowing review for this match. White hot crowd, cannot commend the crowd enough. The match did absolutely nothing for me. I was counting down the seconds till it was ending. So the first half was like relatively slow and plodding, but it's setting stuff up, like the Gunther bruise on the arm. Like the wear and tear. Randy Orton's obviously got his back, which he's constantly selling. How much of that is actual pain and how much of that is in character. The lines are very blurred right now. All I can say is he is slowing down slower than normal. But then those pieces that kind of got set up were just activated so incredibly slowly that the pace of this match was plodding and slow. It multiple times just gave me room to lose interest in the match. And, well, again, first half, it was also doing that. I was in there for the first half. It's setting stuff up like kind of. And then when the pace got actually slower, it's like, oh, God. This match needed to be way shorter. I get what they're trying to do, but make the event feel bigger just to have it go longer, but yeah, I was bored. To be fair, the crowd were loving every single second of it. They obviously wanted to live in that party atmosphere, so they could have gone even longer for that crowd. Me sat at home, bored off my tits. So bored. So incredibly bored. Oh, and I love Gunther. Genuinely, think the world of him. I couldn't wait for this match to finish. Oh yeah, I really didn't like it. This match wasn't for me. Let's actually jump on to the rest of the show with me, having all said that. Let's jump on over to the WWE Undisputed Universal Championship. Play the clip, future me. Play the clip.
That grit and drive of Cody Rhodes is unsurpassed.
Cody was on one leg there. Crossroads to Owens. Cover by Cody. Hook of the leg. Cody Rhodes retains the title.
That was alright, wasn't it? A standing ovation before the bell certainly set a grand crowd bar for the night. Never mind the Royal January, it's been a while since I've heard an arena genuinely rumble. The match did its job. I'm not going crazy over it. There's some people who really, really enjoy this match. I'm not going crazy over it, but WWE fans got a serving of their kind of flow here. That's one thing I'll say here, is that I got my feeding last week with All In. That was really my kind of show. Absolutely dug it. I'm going to be rewatching that again and again and again. This show here, not as much for me, but I can definitely see that there's an audience for it. It's easier for me to understand that with Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, but then it is Gunther, Randy Orton, because I wasn't bored just during Cody Kevin. It's just it didn't really sucker me in that much. It felt like it's one of those matches where I'm watching them perform the moves and the flows and they're setting things up and they're paying off the little amplifications of what they're building up to. The flow of it and the pacing is absolutely fine. But I wasn't able to really get invested into it. It was never a match where, you see critique of AEW sometimes, where it's just it feels like I'm just watching them perform the moves or whatever. Well, that's what I felt watching this match. I was watching them go through the flows and amp things up, but I never really got invested in the story they were telling. Where, again, it's in front of a white-hot crowd, and that always makes it way easier to digest and get to stage. But I wasn't anywhere near as invested in this match. It was fine. It was absolutely fine. But I didn't really get invested into it. Commentary hit hard on KO having not held a singles championship in 7 years. The match started out respectfully as they let the crowd do their thing and enjoy their sing-song before gradually amping up. The crowd hyping themselves up into a "This is awesome" for a very much at the time perfectly fine middle of the match. At that point they were still setting stuff up as getting a "This is awesome" was, interesting. The gear kicked up after KO frog splashed off the apron, the flow in the ring swinging with a bit more oomph afterwards. Cody's rhythm allowed Cole and Barrett's beats to debate his condition. Owens showing his fight as punches kept swinging into his favour more often as the match went on. A proper standing ovation this time. That's actually linked to the match rather than the crowd getting themselves amped up of their own excitement. As KO's offense started to properly swing and hit, an awesome pump handle thing driving onto his knee, a senton off Brett's rope, the always gets a pop fisherman suplex reversal off that second rope, the ovation coming after he kicked out of the crossroads, a great little sequence catching the Cody cutter but having his stunner also caught as he instead got crossroads on his big Canadian head. Just there were lots of really good sequences feel like I'm building up, so it was okay, here we go, we've kicked into that gear. The only problem is, I know that these two have got not just one more gear, but at least 2 or 3 more gears past this. This was almost like, this is a pay-per-view match. Okay, here we go. Start to deliver, and it kind of stays at this gear and finishes when I know they can both go more. But also, this is a B-level pay-per-view. That's the other thing I keep in my mind as well. It's you know what, you go out there, the crowd are white hot, You hit your 3-star match, like whatever, it's fine. You don't have to kick it up past that. It's not that kind of promotion either. Like, you don't really need to. It's not what the fans are clamouring for compared to AEW. When AEW, this would be like a big critique thing, whilst with WWE, if someone like me watches and goes, yeah, it's fine. And then we move on with our life. Except for, I've got a copious amount of notes, so I don't move on with my life. I stay in this moment. I can't leave. Knee focus brought to the forefront as Cody buckled on a corner Cody cutter, but Owens refused to go after Cody's injured knee until provoked, the story being that he couldn't pull the trigger and powerbomb the champion onto the apron. He's not that Kevin Owens. He couldn't do it. Actually nailing the stunner, but it's not enough. The pop-up again blocked, but no trifecta of crossroads, instead for another stunner and a rumbling crowd reaction. Swanton blocked, army knee, but it hits the final crossroads for the win. Commentary hitting hard that KO lost because he couldn't hit that powerbomb onto the apron. Lots of little touches letting the loser show his dissatisfaction at being a loser. Pushing the camera away during the hug, refusing to let Cody raise his hand, going to leave a couple of times during the hand raising. Like I said this last week, and I think before as well, that I wouldn't mind if this match was used to start an arc for KO, rather than just being a 3-week attempt at intrigue for Berlin. And it looks like that's what I got here. That said, I'm certainly not ruling out them just having Theory and Waller come out and joke at him, have a match, and then we all move on. Like, I'd rather they didn't, and like hopefully this will be something more. To be fair, if anything, I'd be happy with just like no more KO versus A-Town Down matches, but what are the chances of that? What are the chances of that? For me, it was an absolutely fine match, but I can see where certain people would get super excited. The crowd were at an absolutely electric level. For me, it became very apparent very quickly. It's like, this crowd are going to be absolutely excited and going crazy for everything. But also when it comes to the flow of the matches, they're not really going to be reacting to it. They're already at an 11 before anything happens. And they kind of stayed like that for a lot of the show. But it's one of those where I did like the closing sequences, and it felt like we were in that third gear, kicking up to fourth, but it kind of match ended before it hit fourth. It flowed into story things. I've talked about it with the last pay-per-view with SummerSlam, that a lot of the way that WWE books their matches, a lot of the flow of the wrestling, then the wrestling stops for them to tell the story, and then the wrestling continues afterwards. At least with this match, when the match stopped to tell its story, it was a lot more integrated into it. So like with KO and the powerbomb, commentary very quickly just starts hammering home about, well, this is the reason, just to make sure we definitely got it. It's almost like it's a similar rhythm, but at least it is integrated into the actual match happenings rather than outside interference or stopping for a big story beat like with the bracelet. It is actually, move related. Like, I couldn't make myself do this wrestling move on you. I couldn't take advantage of the situation of you being hurt immediately. You didn't really go for it until Cody Rhodes started pushing him. It's things like that. Even though it's technically the same flow, like I'm a lot more forgiving of it just because of that. It's actually integrated into the rest of the flow of the match. It's the story of the wrestling match that they've been telling. It's what that's been building up to. Rather than doing a wrestling match, they've got their own little story in there. Then you stop to do the big story beat. Or the big interference happens. Then we'll flow on over to the Women's Tag Team Championship. So let's jump on over to Alba Fyre Aladorn versus Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill.
A storm is coming.
This was certainly a match that happened. I definitely watched it, but do I remember much from its 10-minute runtime? Absolutely not. And I'd only drank one can of 4.5% alcohol Irish cider by this point. It's like, whoa, I'm only on my second can at this point. It's like, don't blame the alcohol for me not taking in a lot of this match. I just don't think it was that memorable. I mean, that's a lie. I do remember that both teams had their own great-looking matching gear. The superheroes in green and silver, the villains in black and white. Translating it into German Bundesliga football, we're talking Wolfsburg versus Freiburg. Like they've got their own kits. The villains having their villainy ruffled, entering a pretty free-flowing back-and-forth flow. The outcome was always inevitable, but they gave the Scottish way more offense than I was expecting. Our second swanton reversal in as many matches. Damn it, D'Lo. This time Alba flying onto her own partner's knee. Shortly after Ida met and assisted DDT with Bianca's 2 feet as she was pushed back into the Jade German for the win. Like, hey, someone technically won with a German in Germany. Good for you. Good for you. I will say as well, the thing I wasn't expecting was that flow where we can kind of free flow for like the last few minutes of the match. Because I think they only got like 9 minutes or so for this. But the final actual flow for the match, it was the most fun I was having on this show. I wasn't expecting it. It's like, oh, this is actually quite fun here. This 3-minute period, I'm actually doing all right here. Again, absolutely fine, but I did have fun with it. I did have fun. Then we move on to the strap match. Not got a lot to say for the women's tag team titles. Like, yeah, it was the booking you would 100% expect before you even watch the thing. I don't just mean in terms of result, I mean the actual flow of the match was exactly what you expected. But they managed to make it fun and entertaining within that. Then we move on to the strap match, which in terms of similar thing of going into it, there was a certain expectation how this was going to play, and either you thought, oh, it's fine, or you thought, this is dumb. And this match did absolutely nothing. JJ's opinions. So let's play the clip for the strap match for Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk.
And CM Punk
Just spotted the bracelet that means so much to CM Punk.
and he finally has it back, and he hits the buckle, and Punk wins the strap match.
Nothing screams blood feud more than red light, green light, I hate you, let's play a fun game. Ugh. I'm not saying the stipulation doesn't look enjoyable and isn't an entertaining match, but it is all rather very silly. It's not blood feud. The feud that these two have been building up, what happened in the Angle on Raw after this as well, this stipulation doesn't fit that, but it is an entertaining WWE, like sports entertainment style of match. It really fits WWE. But it doesn't fit a blood feud. I mean, we'll go into the details why. To the actual flow of the match, Drew attacked CM Punk right into the Killer's Game logo before the bell. How dare he? The film's out in just under 2 weeks. How dare he? Giving the baddie an open opportunity to just whip Punk outside of the rules of the city game. McIntyre almost ironically participated. You go, mate. But no, it cost him straight into a GTS. Cole then over-explaining the rules of the city game. Something about hitting a move also resetting the lights, only for Punk to also not give a shit and just whip his opponent. Like, at this point I'm like, have they actually just found a way to make me enjoy this by purposefully not wrestling the match? Just doing a strap match. Sprawling out to ringside and into exchanges upon the announce table, but that didn't stop the Germans cheering for the wooden table. It's no DQ, so obviously that means the strap isn't really the main weapon after the first opening moments. Tables, chairs. Drew headfirst into the corner propped chair to stop him from tapping the corners. Then Punkerton dropped like a sack of potatoes out to the table set ringside. I really enjoyed that. The crowd rather enjoyed Drew carrying Punk on his shoulders, with the goodie tapping the corners after the baddie in comedic fashion. It's like, yes, blood feud. They just battered each other in the middle of the ring after. There we go, back onto point. But that is my case in point, that they had to find a way to amp the feud back up after they played the city game. Drew pulling the bracelet out of his trunks, immediately, Twitter going, covered in his ball sweat, and putting it onto his wrist, nailing the Claymore with a lovely countdown from the Germans. There were even more behind the sequence of GTS nailings, taking back the bracelet and tapping the final corner for the win. And the social media people rightfully questioned Punk kissing the bracelet. You know, the bracelet that Scott took out of his trunks part way through the match that definitely had Drew's sweaty ball sweat on it. And you kissed it. You weird man. Like, no, absolutely not. No. Because I wouldn't say this match was controversial. It was more that people who knew how WWE did their strap matches, or like to do the strap matches with the red light, green light, would be like, you're trying to sell this as a blood feud, yet I know they're going to be playing a fun game. And you know what? The game was fun, which means the match is entertaining, which means it's kind of doing its job. But it's also not doing its job because every time they play the game, they're not playing the feud. So it's not really a match that fits the feud. It's a fun match, it's an entertaining match. I can't lie that, just like the German crowd, I had a lovely time, it was enjoyable. But also, doesn't fit the feud, really doesn't fit. You're not selling me on your rivalry at all by doing this match. If anything, it's a detriment. They get kind of steered on course by, seemingly for Bad Blood, going into Hell in a Cell. And they directed this correctly through Monday Night Raw. But, yeah, this is what, like, if you want me to take this feud seriously as a beer feud, this was, like, not the match to be doing it. Also, WWE, their strap matches, like, most recently, haven't been this version. They haven't been this version for quite a while. Like, I was right in thinking that there was a bloody one with JBL and Eddie Guerrero. But like most recently, Daniel Bryan versus Bray Wyatt. Like, we don't even have to go to AEW, which, again, I really liked the MJF CM Punk match. But in WWE, they've got Daniel Bryan versus The Fiend, which was also, I really enjoyed that match. They won over a crowd, which was mostly dead after a Rumble. Like, it had an awful spot on the crowd, but they really got the fans invested into it by the end. Like, in a strap match with an unbeatable 80s, like, Jason from the Friday Night movies. Friday Night? Friday the 13th. So I feel like the Friday Night movies is a very different kind of film. That's not a horror film. But yeah, for me, it's the game of this one, which just immediately means it takes the focus away from the feud each time, because the victory is for the way that the game is played. They did have all of the story beats around this feud involving the bracelet, involving Drew McIntyre's actions. They had all of that link into the finish of Punk hitting the different corners. But I just much prefer the fact where normally in a strap match you would see the strap itself being involved in specifically doing something to the opponent. That's the world I'm kind of used to. And last week I was talking about Roddy Piper versus Greg Valentine being the one that absolutely changed my outlook on how a strap match could be done. But yeah, I just find the red light, green light. I find it silly, but I also find that it detracts from the feud you're trying to sell me. It's not a blood feud if they're playing a fun game. But with that said, let's jump on over to something that the crowd absolutely loved. Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio versus Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest.
Riptide! Riptide! And a win!
Going from a very WWE style match into arguably the most WWE thing in forever. This match was so the flow of WWE. Like if you're a WWE fan or you like the style of their matches, you will love the hell out of this match. The German crowd were going absolutely crazy for it, popping so loudly. The kind of setup they're doing for Rhea hitting the Riptide onto Dom Mysterio is working so well. Doesn't mean they're building to a match. I think that's like a great way to go at some point. I don't know if it's WrestleMania, because maybe you want Rhea becoming champion at WrestleMania to be the beat. But at some point, she hits the Riptide on Dom. That's what we're building up to. That's the one thing that's being constantly taken away from. Both of them are allowed to beat up every single person in that stable, apart from they're not allowed to hit their finisher on the one specific person they're feuding with. So, right, Rhea can't hit the Riptide and Dom, and Damian Priest can't properly get his hands on Finn Balor. They're allowed to beat up both those guys. It's a bit, when we get to Raw, it's a bit of a problem I've got. But they're not allowed to get that actual win, like a proper cemented win. They're able to beat them up, but they can't hit their finishers on them. That's the big pop they're building to. This match very laden with house show shenanigans, with Dom and Liv playing distraction in turn. But I'll give credit, the Germans went wild for watching Ripley beat up Dom every time. Plenty of cut-offs stopping us from seeing the beatings we'd like to see. Finally set for the Mysterio destruction right into the Judgment Day interference false finish. Lovely little sunset flip powerbomb springing off the steps from Morgan during all that. Whenever the goodies had momentum, Judgment Lads jumped up onto the apron. The crowd loving every single moment, also giving us the visual pin for Ripley riptiding Liv as Dom took the inside-out bump on the announce table from Priest. The goodies won, but we're just beginning. Priest didn't really get his hands on Balor, nor Ripley on Dom, but we did get Liv eating the pin from the contender, so immediate transition into that. Also, the crowd chanted for Jey Uso once again, and at this point I was like, you might have to call an audible there, like, even if it's just for a few weeks for a multi-man or something, because I'm still working off the assumption that War Games is new bloodline versus original bloodline, but I feel like Jesus got tagged up with the Judgment Lads. Yeah, they didn't wait long. They didn't wait long to do that. But Bash in Berlin for me, it felt like a B show. It was relatively entertaining, relatively fine. It's not for me, and I was still like thinking about I could watch All In again. That was a show definitely for me. Whilst this was a perfectly fine B show kind of style, I much prefer this to what we were getting. Like this compared to Capital Punishment, like it's not even a question which one I prefer to be getting. It's not the most fun to watch live because I don't know if it's the actual aim of what Triple H and the kind of production they've decided to go with what I want it to be. But in between matches, I'm not just kind of like, oh, I can take a little bit of a break or whatever from the show as it's doing all these adverts. But no, I actively leave the room. It's one of those where it's just like, oh, you could just do something else for a minute. It's like, oh yeah, I do. I actively leave, and I come back sometimes with during the show. I missed a couple of entrances just because I was actively gone, and I was just like, well, I know it's going to be a while, so I can actively just leave. I can talk to people, whatever. But I found it to be absolutely fine. Apart from the main event bored me, so I was left on a negative. But for the rest of the show, like it was decently fun. Like nothing crazy. Like if doing the star stuff, I'm not going above 3, but like I don't need to do stars. That's why we were kind of like, it was mostly enjoyable, but it just left me on a note where the main event I found so incredibly boring that was my feeling leaving the show was maybe more negative than it would have been if it was like the tag team main event. If you love WWE style, this show was for you. If you are like me, where the AEW style gears to you a little bit more, then no, this you won't really have a great time with this show. Really, I feel like WWE and AEW are both catering to their fans with the kind of wrestling they want to see really well at the moment, and I like this. I like having variety in my wrestling where both promotions actively feel different. For me, it was a massive negative last year where AEW started to go a bit more WWE because I want them to be different. For me, restoring the feeling for AEW, because I like how restore the feeling for me, it means something slightly different to whoever you ask in terms of the fans or the wrestlers or whatever. For me, it was just, they kind of had their own unique identity. The kind of style, the way they told their stories, the way they presented their wrestling, what was the focus during their matches. I want that variety. I want them to feel different to WWE. I don't want them chasing WWE, being like, oh, this is how WWE success, that means da-da-da-da. No, I want to feel different. And for me, this is a definitely WWE show. From top to bottom, from minute one, it feels so WWE. Yeah, for most of the matches, relatively fun. It's just that main event, man. Anyway, that's my review for WWE Bash in Berlin. But let's jump on over to Denver for Monday Night Raw with our new commentary lads. Like, hooray, hooray. Like, I'm not American. I don't know who this Joe Tessitore is. Like, I don't know who this brand new lad is. Like, nice to meet you, Joe. The bar isn't high. And he came so incredibly prepared. So, he was able to refer to the date of an episode of Raw that happened this year. It's like, I don't need to be like that prepared. Just my bar for what the commentary kind of knowledge for when things happened is so incredibly low. I'm used to hindsight booking. We don't know what's going to happen as it's writing it. I'm still conditioned on that. And Triple H and the rest of the creative team, they're doing a decent job to retrain my brain to really get there, to get rid of those isms. Oh, you came in so prepared, which is a good sign. He feels very American sportscastery, which brings a level of professionalism I'm just not used to for WWE. Like, he's actually... And the bit I absolutely loved was Drew McIntyre's reveal, where I'm just so used to being shouted at, being like, who's that? Who's that? Who's that? And then it's like, oh my God, it's him. Is it him? Oh my God. That's what I'm used to. I'm used to commentary shouting at me. So when he just pops up and Joe just goes, that's Drew McIntyre in a hoodie. I was like, oh, yes. Finally. Yes. In a very calm, monotone way, like a child who just spotted something. He's like, that's Drew McIntyre in a hoodie. like a young child just gone, that's not Santa, that's my dad. Just yes, all for it. All for it. Anyway, let's jump on over to Monday Night Raw, starting off with Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley out to a great pop. I love the usage of the word aura that's kind of happening at the moment. Like, seemingly unaware, they're watching a team of people working together to purposely make the stars feel that way. And it's been that way for over a century. It's fair to say, under this current presentation, the Rhea Ripley character certainly has it. All of it is clicking. The presentation is so perfect for her character. It all lends into itself really, really well. And the pops that she's getting are just getting louder. She's starting to feel more like the focal character of the show in a really good way. She pinned the champion in Berlin, so she wants her shot. Dom and his black eye out to get the booze, saying that Liv's not here. Or is she? The surprise attack fended off, but Ripley found herself hanging upside down with her leg tied on the ropes. Liv giving her a good kick in, until Priest charged on out, setting up Priest versus a random Judgment lad. Instead, getting a tag team match. If only there was a chap the crowd had been chanting for, like the same guy they were chanting for in Berlin, who could just help them out. It was like, who could it be? Damian Priest and Jey Uso versus Irish Judgment. The crowds are white hot and sure do love watching the Judgment Day get beaten up every week. This week, finally getting our Jey Uso inclusion. These baddie folks sure look pretty easy to beat, which is my main little critique here. As much as I'd like Finn Balor to feel like a threat instead of just getting beaten up easily every time Damien gets his hands on him, the live crowds sure react to everything, so I guess it's perfectly fine for their audience. They like this style of booking, therefore it's like, you know what, they're writing for their audience, and that is, at the end of the day, that is what I want for my two different promotions. I want them to be writing for what their audiences want. I'd like to see the Judgment Day just actually feel like a threat, though. To actually feel like a threat, rather than just escaping the claws. But I guess they're doing a lot of the positioning of this. I've talked about the way they've been positioning Damien since he lost the championship, and the kind of definite twist into being 100% a babyface character for him and Ripley that's happened. Still, Terror Twins, bit of a cringy name for me, but they are really positioning them as two huge stars. And it feels like the way they're booking them against the Judgment Lads is that they are both so far above everybody in that stable that they will kick the ass of all of them easily. It's just that the Judgment Day has the numbers. So when they get in Jey Uso and they get the numbers back, they beat them all up easily. And they are both the stars of the show. It feels like that's what they're doing, to really prop them both up. It's just that you're sacrificing the Judgment Lads to do it. So that's your end goal. then they've made their decision. That's where they want to go with it. Judgment interference in the form of Liv Morgan, but the tag champions didn't make sure that Priest was down after hitting their coup de grace moonsault combination, so he broke it up. Ripley then out to swing her crutch and counter Morgan. Finn sent out so JD can eat the Razor's Edge and Uso splash for the win. Continuing the streak of Damien easily beats up Balor, but he doesn't get to really beat him up, what with finishers and the like. I don't think this is building up into Damien and Rhea getting people on their side to do something at War Games, because I still feel like it's Bloodline versus Bloodline. It's what I talked about with the Bloodline stuff, actually. If they're building up to an actual singles match, it's perfectly fine just to have one of these will be in War Games and the other one will be the singles match. And you can keep building it up and decide which one you want to do much later in the day. I feel like they're in a pretty good place where it doesn't really matter which feud is in the War Games and which one gets the singles match. I feel like it makes more sense for this Judgment Day one for these guys to get the singles match. Because again, the end point is 2 separate singles matches. That's what you're building to. You're not really wanting to see them face the Judgment Day. You specifically want to see them face each other. Whilst with the Bloodline stuff, it feels like it'd be pretty easy to get Roman and the Usos back together to get really excited. Maybe bring in a Sammy if need be. We'll then go on to a segment which had quite a lot of people talking in a positive way. CM Punk and Drew McIntyre in a bracelet. CM Punk has got his bracelet back because the feud that wasn't about the bracelet was about the bracelet all along. Punk out here like he was told to go out and riff. The only direction is to be hyped, to be here in Denver. He's ready to move on, eyeing Gunther and setting his sights on the World Heavyweight Championship. He didn't check the calendar first because bad blood boils first. That's Drew McIntyre in a hoodie, beating up Punk via the announce desk and claymoring the poor lad right in front of the Prime advertising too, throwing Mr. Chicago Man into the ring for another claymore before taking that bracelet, ripping it apart and shoving the beads down the man's throat. I've kind of condensed that all together, but they gave each beat of there like a time to breathe. So you got him holding the bracelet, staring at it, then you got him ripping it apart for that crowd reaction, then you got him beating up CM Punk and then just shoving the beads down his throat. Like each beat had its moment to breathe, and that really helped sell this. Not even Kenny Dykstra, Jason Jordan, nor Daivari could stop him. Love the reaction for the new commentator man too. Like he may have ran out of energy as the long show went on, but he definitely has his reacting to the baddies doing bad things down pretty quickly. He's got it down. Punk stretched it out after the ad break, commentators in all serious voice, giving the chance for a blood packet in the mouth as McIntyre made his final attack. So this is the blood food that I was wanting to see. This is the level that we're working at. It's just like it doesn't fit the red light, green light. Fits this going into Hell in a Cell. This is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. To a point where I'm not complaining at all that you're doing this match again at the next pay-per-view. The strap match is very silly fun. Not blood feud at all. But this is putting us back on track to then sell us the Hell in a Cell. I feel like that's quite wise. Instead of just doing an angle to immediately sell out Hell in a Cell, they take it up to another violent level. It's believable that they really want to do the Hell in a Cell stip. Then we talk about the World Heavyweight Champion Gunther. What's next for our European hero? Well, who was the last man to beat Gunther? Sami Zayn out to guarantee us a banger at Bad Blood. Sami Zayn and Bad Blood, you say? Just Google Sami Zayn Taylor Swift Megamix. Like, I haven't got the copyright balls to mix it into the pod. But within there, definitely somebody mixed Sami Zayn's theme to Bad Blood. It's definitely there. It's definitely there. Sami comparing himself to great IC champions of the past. Names like Bret Hart, Steve Austin and The Rock, who rose up to also be great world champions. The crowd, obviously, what Gunther because he's foreign. Who cares what Sami's talking about? He's foreign, it's what him. But they did at least react to him just shooting Sami down. A nice note as Zayn immediately then points out that it isn't in Gunther's character to walk away from a fight. So why are you walking away from this one? And I really like the touch within that. The camera was on Gunther as he walked up the ramp, so you got to see his expression, and then you got to see him turn into a smile before facing Sami. So when the face that Sami sees is one of confidence. All for them using a generic baddie trope of the champion going no and just walking away, but to then use it purposely to then to the champion's character. And then we move on to the copious other notes with a lot of just bish bash, Kerry Godwin bashing through it, bish bash bosh. Chad Gable slapped his American maid into shape for their mixed tag match with Alpha Academy. Maxine got to kick old Chad off the apron, but Ivy Nile dragon slept the lass immediately after. Her submission looks great. Gable then talked shit on the mic about the White Six, calling Uncle Howdy out for an 8-person street fight next week, promising to get rid of the Wyatts, for America. And the thing I love, there's a little detail I didn't really notice. Raw's in Canada next week. So when he says he's going to win for America, they are coming out full America. Adorning flags, national anthem, everything. Just lean into it, full America for this. Then Howdy came out, chatted some bollocks, kind of lost the crowd his acceptance, but then when everyone else comes out, the crowd immediately back into it. Like, a lot of things are working with the White Six, but Uncle Howdy doing Bray Wyatt style meandering monologues, that's not going to work with his current gimmick. It still kind of loses the crowd a little bit. Women's tag titles, number 1 contenders match. Damage Control Sky Pirates faced Fire and Dawn. Really, the note from this match is a bad-looking landing for Kairi, as her dive to the outside was more caught by the announce table than the humans. Like, her left eye was bleeding pretty heavily at the end, like, looked pretty gnarly. Zelina Vega had someone in the crowd holding a sign for her dad in a... So I'd like to have a quick tear. Like, it's just a quick one, though. Shayna Baszler's going to beat her up in a second. DeVale on the mic after "No man can take us home, and no woman can deal with us, period." Sigh. Just like, probably wouldn't have been the worst idea in the world to consult the 2/3 gay group on their generic lines. Like, as soon as they're saying, like, they're doing a "you people" promo, just head down and... Okay, alright. It's a problem with Monday Night Raw at the moment. Whoever's in this spot with these women tag titles, be it the Party Girls, be it the Sky Pirates, be it these guys, it doesn't really seem to matter. It's a division that the TV show tells you doesn't really matter. And the style of booking that they're getting from it is so interchangeable and nothing. The material they're getting to work with here is nothing. Like, there's not really anything... They're on TV, they're getting time, but it's not... There's no effort in it at all to really build anything. At least I'll say with AEW at the moment. With AEW, it feels like when you're watching a women's segment at the moment, there has been effort and thought put into it, into what you're seeing, about why it's building up and what it's doing. This feels so incredibly lazy. It feels nothing. The tag team match that was within this division beforehand felt exactly the same. So it's just in a constant cycle of just, this isn't really building anybody up, getting anyone over. It's just a waste of time, almost. And the lines are so incredibly generic. Like, surely that line of "no man can take us home and no woman can deal with us." Like, surely this group, their makeup is so unique that line surely should have been shot down backstage, because it's so incredibly generic. And you've got such a unique, like, MMA style group. And you do none of you guys will be able to take us home. It's like, for God's sake, it's so much more than... like, what is this generic shit? You could swap these out for the previous heels that would be fighting in this division, and it wouldn't make any difference. And finally, the Intercontinental Championship number 1 contenders qualifying tournament, to give it its full name again. Ilya Dragunov beat Dom Mysterio and Dragon Lee. Remember him? Carlito interference summoned Priest, who chased Dom away, letting Lee get a little shine in the light against the other Dragon. Also, Bronson Reed caught COVID. Get well soon, big man. Written off decently, as you could just use the car spot from last week to explain his absence pretty soundly. Sort of lessened by Braun Strowman, the many attacks coming out for his match, like he needs a big poo. He's holding his bib, and he's just like, It's just like, come on, you can make it, I believe in you. He beat Sheamus and Ludwig Kaiser in their 5-minute qualifier. Oh, and the Odyssey Jones stuff that had been building up with New Day for the past week. In terms of, like, on television, it was weird because on Monday everyone watched the show, and it's like, he's just gone, he's taken off the roster. Like, what's happened? There was no mention of him. Kofi had a quick little thing with Gunther backstage. There's absolutely no mention of Odyssey Jones' existence. It's like he never existed. Then it breaks that he's had allegations of domestic abuse. It's like, okay, right. Yeah, hadn't been sent down to NXT or anything. Like, he's just been straight up fired. It's like, you know what? Cool. Yeah. But yeah, Monday Night Raw was a perfectly fine follow-up, swinging us decently into Bad Blood without just immediately going, "I'm going to fix you up, Bad Blood." Like, AEW had to do it because they had a 2-week turnaround. Like, they've got a bit more time with that here with Bad Blood for WWE. So having this week where you don't really mention the pay-per-views, but you better keep pretty clear where you're going with each of the matches. So you're going to see a lot of Bad Blood settled. But that is the end of the WWE week. That was a fun WWE show in Berlin with a main event that did absolutely nothing for me. But the rest of the show, absolutely, like, it's fun, it's fine. Did I enjoy it anywhere near as much as All In? Absolutely not, because it's not really fair to compare a stadium show to a B-level pay-per-view, but, you know, it's still relatively fun. Monday Night Raw set up decently well enough what's going to be coming up. But that does bring me to the end of this week's adventure. Thank you for listening, liking, engaging in any form, any manner. Always appreciate it, never take it for granted. I'll be back this time next week to talk about Smackers and Monday Night Raw. What did you think of Bash in Berlin? Like, am I crazy for just thinking, for big, like, the strap match was, you know, was all right? Like, it's fine. Sometimes I feel myself just going full Dave Meltzer. Like, with seeing all the aggregation online of it's got to have the worst thing, it's the best thing, it's funny, stupid, and I just watch it and go like, I mean, it's entertaining, but it doesn't fit. It's like, whatever. For the rest of the show, watching matches being like, yeah, it's perfectly fine. The lukewarmest of takes. The WWE show was fine. It was okay. If you enjoyed it more, good to you. That's absolutely fine. It doesn't have to be the best thing in the world or the worst thing ever. Things can be okay. They can be all right. I don't need things going at 11 all the time. Sometimes you could go in at 7. You could go at 7 and that's fine. It's all right. You can grab an ice cream. I don't know where I'm going with this. That's on the show. So I'll be back this time next week. With that, I say goodbye. Adios.